Before we begin, thank you very much to Neo for joining the Patreon campaign. Appreciate it very much. Thank you so much for the support. It means the world to me and it helps me so much. Yeah, it's legitimately what keeps me doing what I am doing. So thank you to everyone who pitches in. If you would like to, it's in the description below. Even $1 a month counts. It gets you shout outs. It gets you potentially Patreon access, as well as potentially video requests. I'm working on a few other things that I think are going to be fun. So be on the lookout. I'm going to try and do more for my patrons in the future, including things like watch parties. That's going to happen soon. So it is spoiler time. So yesterday we did a completely clean review for everyone who hasn't seen the movie yet, but now the movie is out in a lot of places. Either late night or midnight showings are happening, and then Friday is the official release date for most places, I think. So we're going to be talking about this movie in full detail and full spoilers this time. So fair warning to everybody. This is a very spoiler-filled review. We're going to be talking about the events of the movie and what I thought of everything that went down. So if you accidentally clicked on this video, this is your chance to hit the back button, go watch the non-spoiler version that I posted yesterday instead. So, you're all warned. We're in it now. Alright, so let's talk about the nuts and bolts of Rise of the Beasts. So, just to get us kicked off here, just to kind of establish things, it's not high cinema. This is going to be one of those movies, just like the Mario movie, where it's like it goes by a very standard formula that to fans is going to be pleasing, and to critics and those who are just a little too uptight about their movies, they're going to pan it. Oh, this movie is so horrible. Oh my god, blah 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 blah. For the average moviegoer or the critic, it's going to be, you know, a 5 out of 10, 6 out of 10. Maybe less if you focus on the negatives so much, because you know people love focusing on the negatives. But the fact is, if you're a fan, and if you know the Bayverse and know what you're getting into with live-action Transformer movies, it's a good movie. It really is. So, I mean, it's definitely better than the Bay movies. I said it in the last video, I'll say it now, it ranks number 2. It's between the Bumblebee movie, which is my top still, and the 07 Bay movie. Those, you know, that's where it falls in my ranking right now. I've had a couple days to marinate on that, and it really does feel like the right spot for it. Because there's lessons it took from Bumblebee, but things that it also kind of took from the Bayverse, and that's maybe for the worse. And part of that is the structure of the movie. So I like the different storytelling structure of Bumblebee. It felt very different from the other Transformer movies. Here we're kind of back to the same formula. We get like a prologue scene that happens on the Maximal's home world, and it shows Scourge and the Terracons invading it, and eventually Unicron destroying it. So that's our establishment, and it's the exact same formula they used in Age of Extinction and The Last Night in order to set up the MacGuffin and tell us what the real plot is before we go into like all the human side stuff to slowly introduce us into the robots. Same exact structure, and it's going to follow the same structure of the other movies. It's a 3-act story. You know, there's a MacGuffin, villains chase MacGuffin, Autobots determined to get MacGuffin. Oh no, villains got MacGuffin. I guess we have to destroy the MacGuffin. Pretty much the same plot. That you can describe. I can describe most Transformers movies with that exact same formula, with that exact same plot. There are some shifts here. There's a few things they do a little bit differently, which is nice, but overarching, it's basically the same type of story. So if you go into it expecting that, you'll be fine. It's a popcorn flick. It is a turn your brain off and just enjoy the shinies on the screen. But at least in this movie, they took the shiny parts, the robots, way more seriously as characters than they did in the past. So I'm taking it with that frame of mind. They did much better than they have done before. So giving it that much credit. Oh yeah, part of the opening scene, we get to see Ape Link, another Maximal we didn't even get a clue about until the very final trailers, and you might have just mistaken him for Primal because it's another gorilla, more silver, more heavily armored. He's depicted as like the leader of the Maximals before Primal takes over. And he kind of stays behind and keeps the Terracons at bay while the Maximals escape with the transwarp key. Which again, they pulled a Beast Wars term for this transwarp. I like that. Ape Link is a deep cut for a live action movie to pull. I think that was really cool. Now, obviously, they're just kind of looking for some other like leader character to like inspire Primal before they run off, and they're looking to reuse a model, you know, because it really is just Primal's model upscaled and with some extra armor attached to it. Okay, you know what? That's fair. That's fair. They did the same thing in Bumblebee to create Cliffjumper. So I'm not gonna get too wrapped up around that. But no, I mean, it's a cool opening scene. It definitely sets up how ominous Unicron and the Terracons are. It does a good job of that. But it does still feel very much like the last Bay movies. Oh, by the way, this movie is set in 1994. If you didn't notice, the kid playing a Game Boy while wearing a Power Ranger shirt, who calls his brother Sonic, and who, you know, and his brother calls the little kid Tails. There's a lot of 90s. There's a lot of 90s lingo being used. It's very hip hop. The soundtrack is very hip hop. So it's definitely like a nice nostalgia ride for 90s kids like me. And but I think if there's anything that will tell you this movie is set in the 90s, the World Trade Center is still standing. Okay, I definitely know where we are now. It takes place in Brooklyn largely until they move it all to Peru, granted. All right, so that's mostly like establishment movie, like, and then yeah, and like Transformers movies, similar format, and then we're in the 90s. Let's talk about like actual character stuff here, because I don't want to go like 25 minutes, but I'm going to. So I like the character arc that Mirage has. He needs to take things more seriously, and he needs to learn how to be a team player, which Noah does too. That's also in his story arc. I've said it in the spoiler free, I'll say it now. He feels like the most genuine character in these Transformer movies so far for the robot casts. I absolutely believe he is the personality he portrays. I believe that he is genuinely friends with Noah. He treats Noah and his brother Chris with like a lot of just like friendly respect. Not looking down on them because they're humans, or like acting like, when Chris starts threatening Mirage about taking care of his brother, Mirage takes it seriously, and like he even takes the walkie-talkie to stay in communication with his brother, which somehow works from across the world. That's a really good walkie-talkie. I assume there's some Cybertronian influence at that point. There's a scene later on where he'll be hearing his brother's voice through the walkie-talkie buried in Mirage. And I think that's a little too much. I think that spot is a little too cheesy. But it's a giant transforming robot movie, so I can't really complain about cheesy too much, can I? So Mirage has another weird ability that I thought was cool, but it kind of breaks one of my big rules about, like, one of my pet peeves with the live-action Transformers movies is they seem to be able to scan and turn into anything they want, which I don't really agree with. It feels like to me that like a Transformer that's made of solid stuff should only be able to transform into things that suit the parts of the body shape that they have. So like I don't think, you know, like Optimus Prime could scan like a jumbo jet and transform into a jumbo jet. In this movie, Mirage shows off that he has stockpiled alt modes that he has scanned and can switch between them freely. So he shows off that he has a Lamborghini mode. He has an F1 car mode that we see him transform out of. That's a really cool throw. Thank you for giving me at least one shot of Mirage as an IndyCar. And then later on, he's shown as a dump truck in order to get into the museum secretly. Which is kind of a funny visual gag, just to see a dump truck that has his silver and blue stripings from his Porsche mode. That's funny. I do like that. But it does kind of break my thing of like, how do you turn into a dump truck? You don't have the physical mass for that. Oh, well, forget it. He also turns into the exosuit for Noah later in the movie, but he's so heavily damaged at that point, it's almost like a rule of like Frenzy from the first movie, where like he's got so little mass left that, okay, maybe he could actually do this. But again, like, I always like Transformers are kind of like, well, I have to turn into this or that, because like there should be limitations to it, to how this actually functions. I do like the mid-credit too, where Noah manages to rebuild Mirage out of like a bunch of junker Porsche parts. I want the repaint of that. Whatever Mirage toy we're eventually going to get, I need the junker repaint, please. But yeah, I actually really like Mirage. Mirage might be my favorite character of the Transformers in these live-action movies. As far as the other Autobots go, like, Bumblebee gets killed off in the first act, which I thought was kind of bold. And then he only shows up again at the midway through Act 3. So he takes off the entirety of Act 2. And the de facto second Transformer, the second Autobot, is RC, who does come across very second commander type, second in command type. I like that. It's a good role for her. She really doesn't get a whole lot to do in the final fight besides crowd control, which is what some of the Maximals are on. I wish she got a little bit more time, because I did like what I saw of RC. I like that they were treating her seriously despite being like a much smaller Transformer. And I like that she got her licks in the fights. Like, she's not afraid of like stepping up in a fight. By the way, that shot they showed in all the trailers where the missile is going through Wheeljack, like super close to her face. In the movie, her mouth movements, she's absolutely dropping an F-bomb. There's no verbal, there's no audio for it, but you can read her lips. So good on the animators for making it clear. It's a funny little RC moment. So we talked a little about Noah and Prime, and I do like that in this movie, the stories for Noah and Optimus are parallel to each other. They both have trust issues. So for Noah, it is like his thing is he can't get a job because he has a military record that says he's undisciplined, not trustworthy. He can't be a team player, essentially. So his goal in the movie is to learn how to work with a team and how to trust others. And that's kind of what Prime is doing too. Prime has a very guilty conscience in this movie. When they came to Earth, at the end of the Bumblebee movie, it was supposed to be just like a quick stop, but they didn't have a way to get off they can't find a way to get off the planet now. So they've been trapped here for 7 years. So that does establish that this is a direct sequel to Bumblebee. 7 years have gone by, but they absolutely reference those events. So yeah, like, that is where we stand right now. There is absolutely a sequel to Bumblebee and not a prequel to anything else. Bonaventura. Really, it really is getting I'm never gonna let that go. I'm never gonna let that go until he starts shutting up. I'm never gonna let that go. But it's a good thing for start. Like, it's the first time in any of these movies Optimus finally gets to tell a story himself. He just gets to be like the big stoic general type who shows up and just like wipes the battlefield at the end of the movie. In pretty much all the other big blockbuster live action Transformer movies, this is the one where Prime actually gets to tell a story because he's present for the entire movie. There's no scene where, he's dead for the entirety of the second act into the third. Bumblebee took that this time. He isn't like stuck in a spaceship and sent off into space. He is not stuck as Nemesis Prime. He was not captured by Lockdown. Prime exists throughout the entirety of this movie, and his guilt only gets stronger when B does die, because now everything is like there's a vengeance motivation. So these are the moments where like the old Bayverse Prime sneaks in a little bit. He's very angry at Scourge, and that is actually understandable. There's a reason why he acts that way. But like when Prime is like in certain moments, he actually tells jokes. You know, Bumblebee is very much going through movie quotes for this movie. And at one time early on, Prime was like, "Please, I don't want you going to that drive-through theater anymore," which is a funny line. When Primal steals his kill on Battletrap, Optimus verbally complains about it. Moments like that show a different side of Prime. Instead of just being the stoic commander who's just super serious or ridden with guilt, there's actual moments of comedy to him and levity. It makes him feel more real as a character, and that's so much better. And I feel way better about this Prime. And you could tell Peter Cullen was having a much better time in this performance than he has been recently. So that was great to hear too. And yeah, like going back to Noah real quick. I like how he does grow. Again, his friendship with Mirage is very believable. I feel way more invested in their relationship than I ever was Sam and Bumblebee. It is up there with Charlie and Bumblebee as far as like the palpable connection you can tell between these characters. I do wish Elena had more to do, because her character arc is really just getting validation for how hard she works and how good she is as an archaeologist, because her work keeps getting stolen from her. So she gets her moment at the end. She gets her moment at the end where she has very public recognition for her discoveries. And that's cool. That's good. So she gets that. I like that they didn't like force a romance in. Like there might be like a bit of a tease to it, but like they didn't actively move on it. They didn't Disney rush it like they did in past Transformer movies. That's good. It's better handled. Like if it happens, it'll be like for the sequel where it feels a little bit more natural. But yeah, Noah works out pretty well. Noah works out pretty well as a protagonist. I don't want them to time skip ahead again like they did with the Bumblebee movie. If they are planning a trilogy, I want him to come back. I want this trilogy to be about Noah. Maybe throw Charlie in too. There's very good reason that we'll talk about at the very end. Let's talk about the handling of the Maximals. So, they do mention that these are warriors from their past and their future, which actually does imply that what happened to Beast Wars happens in this canon as well. That they are from the future of Autobots and Decepticons. They're descendants from Autobots. However, they have traveled to the past and are now have now been on Earth a lot longer than the Autobots. And the transwarp key, like they do mention that it travels time and space. So yeah, what we saw, I mean, it kind of implies like it's hard figuring out yeah, it like the implication with the timing of it implies that the Maximals are from the distant future. They traveled back to the planet that Unicron gobbled, thanks to the Terracons, and then escaped to Earth. Otherwise, the Terracons had to travel through time too. So no, it gets a little confusing here. It's a little confusing here. Time travel will do that. I like Primal's handling overall. Like, Primal gets plenty of vocal time, so that's good. And I love that they established that the Maximals are actually friendly with a local village in Peru. They actually talk to the humans. Primal knows their language, and that's really cool. And it shows Prime that, yeah, like, there are some humans you can absolutely trust. You know, they're not all in it for themselves. I mean, it's what shows Prime in this continuity that Earth is worth protecting. And it shouldn't just be solely focused on saving his own skin or saving the Autobots. So I like that for once Prime had to learn a lesson. So it works. It works. It gives Primal and the Maximal's presence a lot more emphasis and a lot more importance, rather than just being like shoehorned in like the Dinobots were. I will say I don't think they get enough screen time. Primal does the majority of the talking for the Maximals once he's introduced. Cheetor gets a few lines, but really doesn't get to stand out. Rhinox gets no lines whatsoever. And everyone likes to stay in beast mode. I would have liked to have seen them, like, since they paid for the robot modes, like, I would have liked to see them transform into robot mode, at least, like, when they're alone in the jungle with the Autobots, just so we get good looks at them. Because we only really get to see Cheetor and Rhinox during the final big battle, and you don't really get a good look at how their designs came out, which is really a detriment. I want to see like how much they look like the original incarnations. I want to see how close they look to their toys, and I don't really get that opportunity in this movie. So I wish the Maximals got used a little bit more than they did, or at least got some more lines than they did, because it's really just Primal and Air Razor talking. We'll talk about Air Razor here in a bit. Terracons I also like the handling of. Now, I mean, they're just present enough to let you know that they're always in the background, that they're always plotting, and they're always nearby. And I like that. It gives them like a much more looming villain vibe to them. And the fact that they can like directly talk to Unicron from time to time really gets across just like how dangerous they really are. I mean, it's kind of standard villainy stuff in a Transformer movie, but it's given more time. And the Terracons themselves are actually given some lines. I could have used a few more, especially from Battletrap, but I don't mind it for what it is, because they are ultimately just villains. They're there for the Autobots to look cool when they kill them. I like how they all had unique abilities. I like that, like, Nightbird, true to her name, can fly, so she gets the classic Decepticon advantage. And then Battletrap. I'm surprised at how much I like how Battletrap works. His combat style is to use his wrecker hooks to grab onto things for battle, and they get really clever with it sometimes. You know, during the museum scene, he's grabbing columns and chucking them at RC, which is cool. During the road chase scene, he grapples Wheeljack to pull him off the road. And earlier in that scene, grappled the back of Nightbird so that he could turn around and start firing his missiles while not losing any speed. That's really clever. That's really clever. I love how Battletrap just functions as a fighter. Like, he's using his environment as a weapon. That's really different. That's really cool. I like the idea that he can just, like, whip these, like, scorpion grapple chains around, start grabbing and throwing things. That's different. And it worked well until he got his arm cut off. Ability doesn't really work when you're disarmed, literally. He went out brutally, too. Primal grabbed a wrecking ball and smashed his head in a few times. I do also like they win every encounter except the final one. And it's like, that's where the Maximals numbers and brutality really help shape things up. Because the final battle is where they get all the little, like, frenzy-looking guys, the Freezers. It's where they get Scorponok as backup. And they don't seem to have any trouble handling those and the Hordes. You know, before then, the Terracons seemed pretty hard to beat. But now they have a bunch of reinforcements, but the Maximals are still that one bit stronger and let them take over. So, okay, fine, that's fine. Just a little bit weird. The bad guys do have to lose, despite being described as invincible earlier. The final scene, the final fight between Optimus and Scourge, also happens to include Noah, who is still in, like, the Mirage suit. This is weird. So in the scene where Noah is, like, so small, he's got some decent firepower to him for his size, but he really just kind of acts as, like, running distraction for Scourge while Optimus Prime does the bulk of the fighting. I really wanted it to be Primal and Prime teaming up to beat Scourge, and that's not really what I got, and that's kind of disappointing. It wasn't a bad final fight though. Transformers definitely had worse. It was better than, like, Revenge of the Fallen, where Prime just, like, basically just flies up, beats the snot out of Fallen, rips his face off, and that's it. Like, it's actually a little bit more competitive than that. But yeah, let's see if I have got any, like, little thoughts about that, too. Yeah, it's just... Yeah, it's just weird that someone who was invincible could be beaten just because, like, some human with a plasma gun is just, like, Mega Manning him from the bottom. But whatever, it works, right? So like I said, they killed off Bumblebee. That was weird. It's weird that they would leave out, like, the most popular character for half of the movie. And weirder that they would Deus Ex. Oh, that's what I meant to mention about the final. Like, the Deus Ex, forgot it. When Prime destroys the transwarp key, he starts getting sucked into the portal that's pulling Unicron toward Earth. And what stops him, what saves him, is Noah grabbing onto his axe and holding him in place. Like, Prime was slipping and sliding across this bridge, but tiny little Noah, in his exosuit, has enough grip to hold on to Prime, even if it's just for a minute. It's weird. It doesn't make any logical sense. Like, I know it's to give Noah this moment where he went from distrusting Prime to wanting to save his life, but it does come across as just a bit too much and a bit superfluous, because Primal comes in, and when Noah loses grip, Primal comes in and grabs Prime, and that's how we rescue Prime from the big vacuum at the end of the movie. It was weird. It was the one moment where, like, I'm looking at everything and go, like, I know it's a giant robot movie from, you know, with outer space aliens and all that, but it's the one moment where I go, come on. That's too much. Which I know is ridiculous in a movie about a giant robot planet about to eat Earth, but give it up, fine. Which, speaking of, Unicron, I think is played fine. They don't deal with him. He's not destroyed. He's just delayed, if anything. So he's a looming threat. I think he's going to be a looming threat for the entirety of this trilogy, assuming the movie does well enough to make it a trilogy like they plan. So we're going to see Unicron again in live action. This was not the end by a long stretch. I don't think I think they did him enough justice, because he's a gigantic looming threat that they did not defeat directly. All they did was, like, maintain the current situation, and delay Unicron, which I think is the appropriate response. All you can do is delay Unicron. So good for them. I think they handled it as well as they could. Saving up for a moment where they'll actually have to fight him, you know, 2 movies from now. But yeah, okay, so, like, back to Bumblebee, like, so for some reason, the jungle where the Maximals live have natural, like, raw energon, like it really is Beast Wars, like, where they're out in the jungle and there's energon just growing on Earth. They don't explain that. If they do a spin-off for the Maximals, I'd love to have that explained. But for now, it's just a little bit of Deus Ex, because they use it to bring back Bumblebee. And they lay him on, like, a big rock of energon going, it'd take a much bigger energy source than we have on Earth to actually, like, jumpstart his spark. So you're telling me, like, can any Transformer be, like, jumpstarted? Because they didn't mention anything like stasis lock or comatose. I mean, he got stabbed and shot through the gut by Scourge. He's dead, you know? But somehow he's, like, not dead enough, because he can be brought back. He's only mostly dead. So he's partially still alive. He's slightly alive. So, yeah, big energy surge when Unicron's portal shows up across the planet. That's what triggers the energon. That's what brings Bumblebee back halfway through the 3rd act to be the big hero. And you just get kind of standard Bumblebee stuff. He joins the fight, immediately kills Nightbird, because that's his cool kill of the movie. And that's kind of it. Bumblebee really doesn't add anything to the movie aside from just, like, a cool hero moment. Kind of weird. Like, I kind of applaud the bravery of just kind of, like, leaving him out and letting Mirage take over. You know, it's nice to see them try different characters. So, speaking of different characters, like I said, AirRaiser got a really good amount of screen time for the Maximals. And I really liked AirRaiser's character. Like, to see her as, like, the cool head that kind of brought Autobot and Maximal together in the first place. Cool. Her being kind of the linchpin, because she got separated from the other Maximals in another part of the world. That's cool. You know, like, this whole thing starts at the museum with a statue of AirRaiser with a Maximal symbol emblazoned on the chest of the statue. That's cool. All right, so, like, you know, AirRaiser is the key. AirRaiser is, like, the central point in all this. And then she gets killed off. Scourge corrupts her. She's basically her mind's taken over. She hands the key to Scourge, and she has to get killed off by Primal with her permission. Like, she's telling Primal to do it because she can't fight off Scourge's influence any longer. And it's hard. I mean, it's like, as heartbreaking as a scene in these movies get, because Primal, like, literally crushes her until she stops moving. And you can tell it sucked for Primal. And credit for Ron Perlman doing a way better acting job in this Primal than he did the last time he was Optimus Primal. It's a shot to the gut, because AirRaiser was a good character and much more, like, cool-headed than most Transformers are in these movies. I liked her quite a bit. You know, I even liked her trying to, like, form a little bond with Elena, which I wish got more screen time. I really don't like how this is the movie with the most female Transformers we've seen at 3, and this movie kills off 2 of them. And I don't like that. I really don't like that. I don't like that the most established female Transformer in the movie is the one that is killed off for the sad moment. It feels very manipulative. It feels very women in refrigerator. And that's not comfortable. I didn't really see a reason to kill off Airazor. I really didn't. Like, okay, fine, she got possessed, but like, this is the hero moment where you find a way of getting her sanity back and saving her rather than just mercy killing her. Like, that's supposed to be, like the thing you avoid, and they went straight to it, and that's upsetting. Yeah, I felt that like the death was just there just to add some like tragic moment ending off the second act, just so it seemed like really dark when we got into the third act. That's typical. That's typical. It's supposed to be like Darkest Before the Dawn type storytelling. Yeah, it's what it is. But I know it's a bad taste in my mouth. It's probably like the biggest flaw I have in the movie is just how Airazor was treated. Speaking of mistreated characters, both from the fandom and the movie, Wheeljack is largely ineffective for this movie. He doesn't do a lot. Once he's really just the Autobots' contact in Peru. Just so they know the lay of the land and find out like what's going on in that part of the world at the time. He quickly just becomes crowd filler and just extra guns in the big battles. He doesn't really accomplish anything in the big fights. He doesn't really have many lines after his first scene. His only real dialogue is with Noah, and it's a really kind of forced scene with this like weird there's this weird moment where like Noah is trying not to assume that he speaks Spanish because of his accent, and he kind of like verbally like wanders to Wheeljack. It's that like Wheeljack goes a little bit racist, yes. And Wheeljack is played much more like Beachcomber, where like he's late to meeting up with Prime because he's watching bugs. He's watching bugs. So he's given like just a little hit of a personality, kind of like old Bayverse movie characters that weren't there for anything, and then really just kind of fades into the background. So and he's not the 90s nerd. Like, I think a lot of the fandom, like, they rage against the design. The design really isn't a problem in the movie, and I thought the design meant he's going to be stereotypical 90s nerd, like Steve Urkel type. No, they didn't go anywhere close to that. He doesn't have enough time to do it. So that's Wheeljack. There's really nothing else to say. There's nothing to really say about Stratosphere either. He's just kind of there as a sight gag. I would have preferred Airazor got it. I would have preferred to just have Stratosphere as just a big jumbo jet that never transformed if it meant Airazor got to live and have a robot mode and all that. I think it's a misplaced budget. Yeah, because he basically acts like a toned-down Jetfire. Same kind of vibe. Old man-style robot who still flies. Gross humor. He coughs up a slimy motor part or something. Very akin to Jetfire farting. It's kind of like the one bit of like gross humor that was still here. And he's one of those like very humanized Transformer designs I've never been happy with. So there's that a little bit biased to me too, but Stratosphere is just kind of there. He just kind of serves the plot to get the Transformers around the world. Not a huge deal. I think that hits just about everything. We talked about characters, talked about the overall plot, talked about MacGuffin, references, etc. The one thing we talk at the end is the finale, because much to my joy, this movie doesn't just stop. You know how all the other Transformer movies just stop after Prime like finishes his like message to the Autobots at the end? No, this movie keeps going. This movie gives us an actual denouement. It has an ending. This movie has an ending. Where Noah's trying to get another job. He's at an interview, and this guy in the white suit is just like, yeah, you did some work in Peru. And he's like, I never mentioned Peru. Like, yeah, you were there with Elena and the big guys. This guy on screen. And like, it turns very much into like a Sector 7 vibe, where he leaves Noah a business card and says, we want you on the team. And then he like hits a plaque in the background, big wall opens up full of military gear behind him. And he just kind of leaves, and Noah flips over the card, and like it seems like a setup for this incarnation of Sector 7, and it's not. It's G.I. Joe, which, okay, we've already introduced Unicron, Maximals, Terracons in this movie, and we're going to throw in G.I. Joe as well. But at the same time, when stuff like this is going on, you're going to have some kind of government agency part of the story. You can't really avoid it. It's giant robots from space in the age of cell phones. You can't not know about this stuff. So you got to have some kind of government agency, some like deep government agency that's keeping all of this under wraps and wants to deal with all of this directly. The benefit of this with G.I. Joe is if they incorporate, that makes way more sense to keep it like in this little Hasbro verse for starters. Why invent a covert government agency of specialists when Hasbro has one? And this might be the one thing that actually builds interest in modern G.I. Joe. So I don't really mind this. This actually makes more logical sense than just inventing a new organization. And yeah, it leads to some really interesting prospects for what the sequels are going to be. If they're going to include G.I. Joe characters, if they're going to take over Sector 7's role in the standard storyline, is Cobra going to become a thing? Are like Decepticons and Cobra going to team up? That would be amazing. But what I do like is that it feels like they want Noah on the team. They want all of them on the team, which tells me that at least this time, the government agency in charge of Transformers is not immediately going to stab them in the back and try and, like, decimate them, blow them up, whatever, just for, good old-fashioned xenophobia. No, it seems like that might be more on the level, which would actually be cool. I will actually accept that. So that was the big teaser at the end. For where we're going with this movie, and that's kind of everything I have. Yeah, like I said, I knew this was gonna go long. I apologize for going this long. That's what happens when we go to a deep dive about my thoughts about a movie. I don't just get you in and out and tell you like, oh well, this and this and this, yeah, it's a B minus. No, I actually want you to know everything that went through my head, and I want you to know everything goes on in this movie. Because some people don't mind spoilers. They want to know if, what's going to happen to know if it's going to be worth their time. So, once again, I'll tell you, I like this movie a lot better than the Bay movies. This is second to Bumblebee for me. So, take that for what it is worth. I hope it's worth something to you. And I hope you made it through this long video. I know I've had a lot of long videos lately. I do appreciate your attention span. So, thank you everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed the movie because it is a good Transformers movie. Maybe not a good movie overall, but a good Transformers movie. If you go into it knowing what you're going to expect, if you go into it knowing how Transformer movies work, you're gonna be in for a good time. So don't be so hung up on the things it did wrong, the nitpicks, the bland story, the recycled storyline and the MacGuffins and all that, etc. Just try to have a good time, and just try to enjoy it for what it is, because it is genuinely enjoyable. All right. So take that with you, and thank you guys for watching. I will see you next time.
Yeah, I guess I'll give Bardic to Pain. Pain, my #1 good best friend. You got this.
You're just basically like Caboose at this point.
Just like
church. Oh God.
That's all right. Let's keep this Pain train going. The Caboose is here.
Son of a bitch.
No.
And yeah,
This
you get
makes me
Bardic.
Tucker. I'm quitting.
Joust, take 2 psychic damage.